The movie opens in Vatican City in 1979, where a priest named Thomas sees a white arc above the moon, which is believed to represent the eye of God. He realizes it marks the beginning of a prophecy about a child destined to become the mother of Satan's offspring. Concerned, he rushes to inform the Pope, who tasks him with the mission of protecting the chosen child from the ones who wish to harm her. Meanwhile, in New York City, a baby girl named Christine is born. As she enters the world, a mark appears on her arm, signaling her significance. One of the doctors then takes the little girl away from her mother in the basement and starts a ritual where a man feeds her blood derived from a snake. After the ritual, the doctor returns Christine to her mother and wishes her a happy birthday. The scene jumps forward 20 years to late December 1999, where an investment banker is having dinner with some colleagues. He steps away from the table to use the restroom, but is killed and possessed by Satan inside. Under this dark influence, he gropes the wife of one of his associates before leaving. Moments later, the entire restaurant erupts in flames, leaving chaos behind. The scene shifts to a retired detective named Jericho Cane. He is deeply troubled and contemplating suicide, reflecting on his past. Now, he works for a private security company, trying to find a new purpose in life. Just then, his friend Bobby Chicago arrives at his home and urges him to get ready for work. They are assigned to protect a banker who has been possessed and was responsible for the explosion at the restaurant, though no one is aware of this yet. They quickly get ready and head out for their assignment. While driving the banker to his destination, Jericho suddenly spots a sniper in a nearby window, aiming at the banker. Acting quickly, he pushes the banker into the car, taking the shot himself. Fortunately, he is wearing a bulletproof vest, so he remains unharmed. The banker then immediately drives away from the scene. Jericho and Bobby chase the shooter in a helicopter as he tries to escape from a rooftop. They engage in a tense gunfight, and Jericho captures the shooter just before he can jump off. During their struggle, the shooter attacks Jericho, causing him to fall to the ground. The shooter then retreats underground, where he ominously warns Jericho that 1,000 years have ended, and he does not understand the consequences of his actions. As Jericho demands he lower his weapon, the shooter repeats his eerie line, prompting Jericho to shoot him. Investigating the fallen man, Jericho discovers only a bar card and realizes that the shooter is actually a priest. Moments later, Detective Marge and her team arrive to investigate. She asks Jericho if he is still drinking, and he insists his alcohol use has nothing to do with the case. Marge then reveals that the shooter has no tongue and cannot speak, but Jericho reported that the man communicated something to him. Intrigued, Marge wants to understand how Jericho received that information despite the man's condition. This shocking revelation leaves Jericho stunned. After this shocking discovery, Jericho and Bobby go to the bar linked to the visiting card. There, they find out the man's location. When they reach his apartment, they are met with a disturbing scene, his tongue in a jar and blood-written messages on the walls. They also find a picture of a girl in another jar. Just as they prepare to leave, Marge and her team arrive. She reveals that the man is a priest named Thomas, who came to New York in 1981 after being trained by the Vatican and vanished 6 months ago. With this news, Jericho and Bobby leave the apartment. Meanwhile, Christine is on her way home from visiting her late mother's grave. On the train, a strange man approaches her and warns that someone is coming for her, even mentioning her name. Surprised, Christine asks how he knows her name. When she touches him, he suddenly shatters like glass, making her scream in terror. Looking around, she sees other passengers staring at her, seemingly unaware of the incident. Confused and scared, she searches for the man, but he has completely disappeared. When Christine gets home, she quickly calls her family doctor, Dr. Abel, to discuss her visions. He reassures her that it is common to have such experiences after losing parents, and prescribes some pills to help ease her anxiety. As she finishes the call, her stepmother Mabel comes over and asks how she is doing. Christine shares her vision and expresses her wish to feel normal like everyone else. Both Dr. Abel and Mabel worked at the same hospital, where a ritual was performed for Christine at her birth. At the same time, Jericho returns home, thinking about his encounter with Thomas and the words he heard from him. He opens a box of mementos and feels emotional when he finds a trinket of a dancing girl. After gathering himself, he opens the Bible and decodes messages from the wall in Thomas's apartment that warns about Satan, who will be freed after 1,000 years. Alarmed, Jericho rushes to the church to meet Father Kovac, a priest familiar with Thomas. Jericho asks Kovac about Thomas, but the priest is hesitant to share much, only mentioning that Thomas sensed danger and tried to eliminate it. When Jericho brings up Thomas cutting off his own tongue, Kovac inquires if Thomas spoke of a girl. Jericho declines to have heard any such information, but pushes for more information about Thomas. Kovac refuses to elaborate and questions Jericho's faith in God. Jericho replies that he has lost his belief due to the death of his wife and child, feeling abandoned by God. Frustrated, Father Kovac decides not to continue the conversation and walks away. Undeterred, Jericho quietly follows Father Kovac down to the church basement, where he sees a woman tied to a bed, bleeding from her hand. Father Kovac quickly pushes Jericho outside, warning him to forget what he just saw for his own safety. Later that evening, Dr. Abel is having dinner with his family when the possessed banker arrives at his home, asking about Christine. Just then, Dr. Abel's daughter calls for him, which prompts the man to enter the dining room. Shortly after, he takes both his wife and daughter, seemingly enjoying the situation. As this unfolds, the mother and daughter merge into a single figure that transforms into Christine. Back at home, Christine wakes from a disturbing dream, screaming in fear. Her stepmother rushes in to calm her, highlighting the deep connection between Christine and the man possessed by Satan. The next morning, the possessed banker arrives at the police station to see Thomas, but an officer stops him. To gain entry, the possessed banker shares some details about the officer's past, convincing him to let him into the restricted area. He then heads to the room where Thomas is being held. When Thomas sees him, he tries to scream but cannot. After a brief exchange, the possessed banker murders him. A little while later, Marge, along with Jericho and Bobby, comes to the station to take a written statement from Thomas. However, when they arrive, they are met with a shocking sight. Thomas is crucified on the ceiling, leaving all three of them in disbelief. They carefully take down Thomas's body from the ceiling, believing him to be dead. As they examine him, they discover words carved into his skin, in both English and Latin, likely done with a sharp instrument. The doctor present there translates the Latin inscription, which ominously states that after the end of the 1,000 years, Satan will be released from his prison. Another phrase in English reads, "Christ in New York." Just as they are translating, Thomas suddenly awakens, startling everyone. In the chaos, an officer instinctively fires his gun, fatally shooting Thomas. After this shocking incident, Jericho and Bobby leave the room and head outside the station. As they walk, they decide to find the girl from the photo they discovered in Thomas's apartment. Jericho connects the Latin words to what he has read in the Bible and realizes that the English phrase could hint at the girl's name. He starts experimenting with different combinations of the phrase to search for her. When they reach the station, they check the police database and find the name Christine York, along with her address. Determined, they set off to locate her. At home, Christine is exercising when she learns that her stepmother is expecting her for lunch. She heads inside to take a bath. In the bathroom, she is horrified to find blood smeared all over the floor. Following the trail, she discovers a dead man in the bathtub, which sends her screaming in fear. Just then, 3 strangers burst into her room, and she quickly tries to escape. Christine locks herself in her room, attempting to outsmart the strangers by throwing a cupboard out of the window to create a distraction. She then hides herself in a closet. When the strangers break down the door, they quickly sense her presence in the closet. As they catch her, she fights back but is overpowered. The strangers turn out to be priests from the Vatican, intent on killing her. Meanwhile, Jericho and Bobby are nearby and hear Christine calling for help. They spot the broken cupboard on the street and rush to her residence. Upon arriving, they engage in a fierce struggle with the priests, who eventually flee through the window after the altercation. However, Jericho manages to grab a locket from the main priest before the priest makes his escape. He successfully saves Christine from the Vatican Knights, ensuring her safety in the chaotic situation. He tries to make a conversation with Christine, noticing a trinket that resembles one he has from his own child. Just then, Mabel enters the scene, prompting Jericho to leave. As he exits the house, he takes a book with him and joins Bobby in the van. Unbeknownst to them, Mabel watches them from the window, contacting someone to inform them of Jericho and Bobby's presence. The man on the other end warns her that someone is waiting for Christine, but she insists that Jericho will follow her and discover the temple, so she declines to join them. The possessed banker confronts Dr. Abel, who tells him that he cannot bring Christine to him. In a fit of rage, he kills the doctor and decides to go find Christine himself. Meanwhile, in the van, Jericho opens the book he took from Christine's house and notices the symbol of the locket he grabbed during the fight with the priest. Realizing its significance, Jericho returns to the residence to talk with Christine. He explains that the strangers who attacked her were actually trying to stop the devil worshippers and were not the bad guys. As Christine cuts an apple, she wonders what connection these events have to her. Suddenly, she sees a disturbing vision in the apple and screams. She tries to explain to Jericho that she has a medical condition that causes her to see visions. However, Jericho reassures her that he also witnessed what she saw in the apple. Outside the residence, the possessed banker arrives and notices the numerous vehicles surrounding the house. Determined to destroy everything, he steps to the side, urinates, and throws a lit cigarette onto the ground, igniting a fire that causes all the nearby vehicles to explode. Tragically, Bobby, who is in the van, is also killed in the blast. As Jericho and Christine attempt to escape the fire engulfing their residence, they are confronted by Mabel, who is possessed and exhibits extraordinary strength despite her age. Jericho struggles to subdue her and ultimately manages to rush outside with Christine. As they flee, the banker enters the residence through fire and calls out to Christine, revealing that she knows who he is. However, Christine chooses to escape with Jericho, despite the possessed man's call. Frustrated, the banker turns to Mabel and kills her for failing to complete the task assigned to her. Outside, Marge, along with another officer who is under Satan's influence, confronts them, demanding to know Christine's whereabouts. In a tense moment, Jericho fights back and kills both of them. He turns to Christine, asking her about the chaos surrounding them, but she admits she has no idea what is happening. Moments later, the banker revives the dead Marge, recognizing her value as a detective to help track down Jericho and Christine. When Jericho inquires about the banker, Marge reveals that she mostly has a dream about him, in which he tries to make love with her, even though she had never met him in real life. Terrified, she expresses her fear that if he confronts her, she might be drawn to him. As the sound of police sirens approaches nearby, Jericho decides to take Christine to a church, hoping to find answers from Father Kovac. In the church, Jericho confronts Father Kovac about his men trying to kill Christine, but Kovac insists that they are not his men. However, he quickly realizes the significance of Christine and the banker's roles in these unfolding scenes. Kovac takes them to the basement, where Jericho sees the woman who was previously tied to a bed. Her bloody hands have now healed. Kovac sits and explains that at the end of every millennium, Satan possesses a man's body to unite with a chosen woman. He reveals the symbol of Lucifer, which is also marked on Christine's arm since her birth. Kovac warns that if Satan succeeds in taking Christine by midnight of the new year, he will gain control over the world. He tells Jericho that the only way to defeat Satan is through faith, but Jericho remains skeptical and tries to convince Christine to come with him. However, she chooses to stay with Kovac, feeling that his explanation resonates with her. Frustrated, Jericho heads back to his apartment, only to find the possessed banker waiting for him. The doors are locked, and the windows are intact, but he managed to get in. The banker tries to tempt Jericho with illusions of his lost family, and stirs up his anger towards God to extract Christine's location. He creates a vivid scene showing Jericho's wife and daughter just moments before their deaths. When the banker offers to reveal Christine's location in exchange for his family's return, Jericho refuses, knowing the vision is not real. As the banker intensifies his threats, he begins to show Jericho how his family was killed, trying to manipulate him against God and deepen his rage. Their conversation quickly turns into a physical fight. Jericho shoots at the banker, but the bullets have no effect. In retaliation, the banker throws Jericho out of the window. However, Jericho manages to grab onto the broken glass, hanging on for his life. The banker attempts to persuade him to join his side, offering a hand, but Jericho seizes the opportunity, pulling the banker out of the window instead. Jericho then climbs back up safely into his apartment and tosses the banker down onto a car below. After the incident, as Jericho tends to his wounds, he suddenly hears banging at his door. He rushes to check, worried that the possessed banker he threw onto the car might have returned. To his surprise, he finds the banker missing from the accident spot. Grabbing his weapon, he moves cautiously toward the door, where he is shocked to see Bobby standing right in front of him, alive. Jericho feels suspicious, fearing that Satan might have possessed Bobby's body, but Bobby reveals that when he got out of the van, the explosion's force knocked him into the gutter. To confirm his identity, Jericho shoots at Bobby's hand. When Bobby bleeds, he believes his part of the story. Relieved, they quickly devise a plan to rescue Christine from the church. Jericho asks Bobby to pick them up at the church in an hour, determined to get Christine to safety. At the church, the Vatican Knights arrive again, taking Father Kovac and his subordinate into custody while attempting to kill Christine. Jericho appears and steps in just in time to save Christine. Then Satan appears in the church, forcing Jericho and Christine to make an escape. In a brave move, Kovac's men confront Satan, trying to cast him back to hell. However, he easily resists their efforts, overpowering and killing the Vatican Knights. As Jericho and Christine try to escape, they are surrounded by Satan's followers. Just as Jericho engages in a fight with them, Bobby arrives and quickly gets Christine inside the vehicle but refuses to let Jericho in. Jericho gets badly hurt by the group while the possessed banker drives away with Christine. The next day, Kovac comes to Jericho's aid and tends to his wounds. Once Jericho regains consciousness, he arms himself with weapons from the station and tracks down the banker's location using Bobby's car data from the police database. When he arrives at the location, he spots Marge and quietly follows her to find the banker. There, he sees a crowd performing a ritual for the banker. Marge soon finds Jericho's presence, but is killed shortly after. Jericho then uses Christine as bait, while the banker calls out to Bobby to kill Jericho instead. Bobby hesitates and ends up perishing in the flames. Witnessing his friend engulfed in fire, Jericho opens fire on the evil and escapes with Christine. As they escape, Jericho and Christine reach a train station, narrowly avoiding an approaching train. The operator stops the train and agrees to help them. However, the banker soon catches up and kills the operator. In the chaos, Jericho uses a grenade launcher against the banker, causing significant damage to the train and giving them a chance to flee. With the banker's body now severely harmed, Satan abandons it in search of a new host. Jericho and Christine flee to the church, where Jericho tells Christine to hide. With no other options, he starts praying to God for help. Suddenly, Satan crashes through the floor and confronts Jericho in his true form, taking over his body. He then calls out to Christine, revealing that they have won the war. As she rushes to him, he pulls her back and tries to assault her. Christine keeps reminding him of his true self, which helps Jericho fight against the evil's control. In a desperate move, he impales himself on a sword from a fallen statue, delaying Satan's mission. Just as the new year begins, God frees Jericho from Satan's grasp, sending the dark entity back to hell forever. In the end, Jericho experiences a vision of his wife and daughter, both smiling and waiting for him on the other side. He feels a sense of peace, knowing he has protected Christine from danger. As New York rings in the new millennium with celebrations, Christine expresses her heartfelt gratitude to Jericho for saving her life and honoring his brave sacrifice. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and comment. And watch this one too.